All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most heated debates in American politics, non-citizen voting. It's a topic that really gets people fired up, and it raises a huge question. Who actually gets a say in a democracy?
And we're not going to beat around the bush. We're starting with the claim that really lights the fuse on this whole controversy. This is from a peer-reviewed study back in 2014, and it's basically the foundation for the argument that non-citizens aren't just voting, but they're doing it in numbers big enough to actually swing elections. So what's the real story here?
To get to the bottom of it, here's our game plan. First, we're going to unpack that big claim. Then, we'll look at a totally different set of data that tells another story. After that, we'll try to figure out why these two stories are so different. And finally, we'll ask why this is still such a huge debate today.
Okay, let's start with part one, the argument that non-citizen voting is a real and really powerful force in our elections.
So this claim that you hear about all the time, it's not just pulled out of thin air. It's actually rooted in this academic study. The researchers used a really big national survey, the CCES, which is kind of unique because, unlike most surveys, it actually asks everyone about their voting habits, including people who identify as non-citizens.
And the number they came up with? Whoa. It's a big one. Based on their survey responses, they created a best estimate that 1.2 million votes were cast by non-citizens in the 2008 election alone. Their models even suggested it could be as high as 2.8 million. A number that massive could absolutely change the outcome of close races.
And they didn't just stop at the big number. The study pointed to specific game-changing results. They argued that these votes likely flipped North Carolina to Barack Obama. And maybe even more important, they said it was enough to secure Al Franken's win in Minnesota by just a few hundred votes, which gave Senate Democrats that critical, filibuster-proof 60th seat. I mean, we're talking about major political consequences.
Okay, so that's the story you get from that survey data. But now let's look at a completely different type of evidence. We're going to shift from estimates to what state election officials have actually found when they conduct their own investigations and forensic audits.
And this is where the story takes a sharp turn, because when states dig into their own official records, combing through voter rolls, cross-referencing databases, they find that the number of actual verified cases of non-citizens voting is, well, it's tiny, incredibly small.
Just look at these numbers. An audit in Georgia this year found just 20 non-citizens on the rolls, out of 8.2 million registered voters. The same year, Michigan found only 16 credible cases out of 5.7 million ballots cast. And Louisiana, looking back over 4 decades, found a grand total of 79.
And this right here, this is the heart of the whole conflict. On one side, you have a single study estimating millions of votes in one election. On the other, you have official state investigations finding just a handful of cases over many, many years. How can both of these things be true at the same time?
Well, this quote from the Nonpartisan Center for Election Innovation and Research gives us a pretty big clue. After reviewing state efforts all over the country, they concluded that the issue isn't really widespread fraud. It's that the data is super complex, and that leads to misunderstandings that can create these huge initial claims that just don't hold up under scrutiny.
So, how is this possible? How do we explain this massive gap? Well, it really all comes down to the methodology. You have to understand that estimating from a survey and counting verified cases from official records, they're just two fundamentally different ways of looking at the problem.
The number one challenge with surveys is something called response error. It's just a fancy way of saying people make mistakes. Think about it. You might accidentally check the wrong box on a form. Or maybe a recent immigrant gets confused by the question, especially if they're worried about sharing their real status.
And this isn't just a guess. Research has shown that this is a real documented problem. One study found that for immigrants who've been in the U.S. for less than 5 years, the chance that they'll misreport their citizenship status on a survey is around 75%. An error rate that high can easily take a few hundred mistaken clicks on a survey and blow them up into what looks like millions of people. Now, to be fair, the authors of that original 2014 study, they knew this was a potential problem. They did their own analysis and basically concluded that the people in their survey who said they were non-citizens looked, demographically, like actual non-citizens, which gave them confidence in their results.
Okay, so if the official data from state after state shows this is incredibly rare, then why do we keep talking about it all the time? Why is this still such a huge issue in politics? Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture here.
I mean, you have to just think about the logic here from a non-citizen's perspective. Illegally voting is a federal crime.
The penalties are incredibly severe. We're talking years in prison, massive fines, and getting deported. The risk is astronomical. And the reward? One single vote. The risk versus reward calculation just doesn't add up.
And that massive imbalance leads many experts, like UCLA law professor Rick Hazen, to this conclusion. He argues that the reason this debate won't die isn't about the data, it's about political strategy. It's a powerful story to tell if you want to cast doubt on election results or to frame immigrants in a certain way. Which leaves us right here with this final, crucial question. In an age where we're swimming in data but also drowning in distrust, how do we do both things at once? How do we make sure our elections are secure while also making sure every single eligible citizen has the right and the ability to cast their vote? Balancing those two goals, that's one of the biggest challenges for American democracy today.